we're going into. That blind spot is a precondition for the head of the Fed. So Bernanke is what's called a well-meaning fool. He doesn't understand what he's talking about, and that's just who you want to regulate Wall Street. You want a blind policeman in charge.
So are you saying that Ben Bernanke defines wealth as debt?
He defines wealth as how much a entity can borrow, which is debt. In other words, what's its debt-bearing capacity?
Right. A quick follow-up on Paul Volcker. Now, I've heard him roundly criticized for, when he was the head of the Fed, of course, took interest rates up to 22%, and the claim has been made that that caused the deindustrialization of the United States. Do you agree with that?
It certainly stopped capital investment because nobody can invest when they have to pay 22%. What he did was a response to the Vietnam War. The United States was running a huge balance of payments deficit. It was running a large inflation, and if he wouldn't have done that, raised the interest rates, then living standards would have risen in this country. So raising the interest rates to crisis levels was critical in order to prevent American living standards from rising. And the government believes that the key to economic management is to reduce living standards so there will be more money to pay essentially the companies and corporations to pay the banks. That's the working business plan of the U.S. government.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was just about to ask you why the government would want living standards to not go up.
Because politicians are responsive to the campaign contributors that they have, and the main campaign contributors are Wall Street, the finance, insurance, and real estate industry, and they want the economic surplus for themselves. They don't want it to go to labor. Essentially, we're living in a transition from democracy to oligarchy, and the oligarchy wants the money for itself, not for the people.
Well, yes, and of course that makes sense now, because then if living standards went up, we'd be having the money to spend on ourselves and not them.
That's correct.
Now, getting back to your article on Obama's new financial regulatory reform proposal, you write that this financial regulatory reform that Obama is proposing has 6 major flaws. Do you want to talk about some of those flaws? You say that one of the failures is the failure to give meaningful teeth to fraud reduction. And you talk about the Consumer Financial Products Agency. And I guess we've talked about that with regard to the credit cards, huh?
It's more than that. When Obama bailed out Wall Street, he thought, are the people really going to take this? We have to give something ostensibly to protect the victims of predatory finance. As long as we're giving $13 trillion to predatory finance, we have to give something to the victims. So he said, not only am I giving the biggest giveaway in history, not only am I tripling America's federal debt to give to Wall Street, but I'm setting up an agency to protect consumers from predatory finance. But all that was a proposal, and immediately the financial lobbies got in and said, well, wait a minute, don't give this any teeth. Make sure that they don't have any power. So everybody, especially the Wall Street Journal, is expecting Congress to say, well, we'll go along with the giveaway to Wall Street, but we don't want any agency to protect consumers on this. So the belief now is that nobody's going to be around to protect the consumers.
Another flaw that you saw in Obama's financial regulatory reform proposal was the failure to reverse the shift to pro-creditor bankruptcy laws.
That's right. For almost a decade, the banks have pushed what ended up in the 2005 Bankruptcy Act, which greatly increases the difficulty of individuals wiping out their debts for bankruptcy. The government is trying to make it impossible for consumers and homeowners and wage earners ever to get free of debt by bankruptcy. Only the rich people can get rid of their debts, and they get rid of the debts by turning it over to the public sector and making the government pay. But consumers are not supposed to get rid of their debt. So essentially, if you can't pay your debt, we're moving into a society of what I call debt peonage, where if you buy a house and you can't pay the mortgage, the proposals in the Wall Street Journal last Friday were that the government can come after you for your entire life, and essentially you have to live in debtor's prison for the rest of your life in a kind of Dickensian way, except that you're able to stay at home instead of in prison to cut public costs, but you have to turn over all of your income to the creditors to pay for the junk mortgage that you've been signed into, the fraudulent practices of the last 5 years.
Yes, I was going to ask you to elaborate on what debt peonage would look like in this country, but I guess you've kind of just done that.
Debt peonage is when all of the surplus over and above basic needs goes to pay creditors.
Well, that's a good definition.
In other words, you're able to live, but all of the surplus you produce, anything you earn, anything you produce, anything companies earn over and above break-even costs has to go to pay interest to the financial sector. What happened in the Roman Empire, and the result was the Dark Ages. And the problem is that creditors live in the short run, and they tend to be, it's like in nature you have parasites that as they've evolved in good Darwinian style, they end up usually helping the host. And a good parasite will say, well, look, I want to take the host's blood and nourishment, and I have to do something to help the host. I have to help it digest food, or I have to help it find new sources of nourishment. An intelligent parasite in nature doesn't take so much from the host that it kills the host, because then it wouldn't be able to have any more nourishment. It wants to keep the host going. But at the very end of the process, when the host is about to die, then the parasite lays the eggs, and the eggs hatch and devour the host. That's the end stage. We're in that final stage of the credit cycle now, when the financial sector realizes we've broken the American economy. It's time to take the money and run. And that's the stage of the financial cycle we're into. We're in the bailout phase and take the money and run, and Wall Street's trying to get the government just to take its cash for trash as much as possible, to give it the bailout, and then it's moving its money abroad as quick as it can to buy resources abroad, to buy foreign companies, to buy foreign debt, to buy foreign raw materials, to speculate in the oil and copper and steel markets and drive up prices. So essentially, you're having the financial sector jump ship, realize that it's killed the American economy, and how much can it carve up the economy to take what it can as it destroys the economy.
What do you think this place is going to look like when they jump ship?
Well, I'm dealing with two countries that are sort of the wave of the future. Iceland and Latvia are two countries that have so much debt that is beyond their ability to pay, that the result, for one thing, is emigration. A lot of Icelanders are emigrating. The people in Iceland and Latvia are running down their savings accounts in order to keep trying to pay the interest on their houses that are falling in price. They're trying to keep up with living standards, although their family members are being laid off. And first of all, they dissipate all of the savings they have, paying them out to the creditors. And finally, in order to survive, they're leaving the country. So you have depopulation, falling birth rates, rising death rates. The IMF, for instance, has gone to Latvia, which is the most seriously indebted of all the post-Soviet economies, in saying, you have too many people that are using medical care. They've just cut back the hospital budget by 50%. They're saying you have to let the old people die. They've cut back the schooling by 50%. They're saying you cannot afford to educate your population. If you want an education, you must leave the country. They're saying that essentially Latvians have to cut their population by 1/3 in the next couple of years. Same thing for Iceland. 1/3 of you have to lose your houses, have them plowed under. 1/3 of your people have to emigrate in order to pay essentially what we foreign investors want. We want your geothermal resources. We want your hydroelectric dams. We don't want the people. You have to run a budget surplus, not pay unemployment insurance, not industrialize, not invest, cut back your medical costs, cut back your education, and strip all of your money so whatever you, the government, extract, you pay to the foreign creditors. That's the dress rehearsal for the United States.
Well, now, if we're all going to try and emigrate, where are we going to go?
I don't know.
I'm speaking with financial economist and historian, Dr. Michael Hudson. Today's show, Dress Rehearsal for Debt Peonage. I'm Bonnie Faulkner. This is Guns